The year was 1517, and what the young German theologian was about to do would change the course of religious and cultural history in the West. On the 31st of October 1517, Martin Luther nailed a copy of his 95 grievances, or theses, to a door similar to this at the Wittenberg Church in the state of Saxony, Germany. Martin Luther wrote his theses in protest against several corrupt practices of the Roman Catholic Church during the 16th century, and their publication marked the start of the Protestant Reformation in Europe. Capitalism, as an economic system and mode of organisation, is long overdue a radical overhaul. There are many out there who would love to see a capitalist reformation that would help capitalism clean up its act and lead to an economically fairer and more just society. If we had the time here and now, we could easily list 95 justifiable grievances against capitalism, some of which could be quickly solved if only the political and corporate will existed. Two outstanding economists of the 20th century, Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman, wrote two influential books in 1944 and 1962 that have framed our understanding of capitalism, markets, government and democracy ever since. These two books, The Road to Serfdom by Hayek and Capitalism and Freedom by Friedman, were so influential that they underpinned the entire political thinking behind the Reagan administration in America and the Thatcher government in England throughout the 1980s, and have had a lasting impact on conservative thought ever since. Hayek and Friedman argued that capitalism and free markets protect democracy by limiting the tendency for government bureaucracy to expand and grab power from the people. Hence their ingrained dislike and antipathy towards big government and state intervention. To this day, America's fear of socialism and communism, and any notion of collectivism that diminishes the role of the individual, can be traced back to these two libertarians and others before them. Friedman also established the orthodoxy of shareholder primacy that has defined Anglo-American capitalism for the past 50 years and has shaped a world that is increasingly driven by the power of big corporations. Today, there are growing concerns about the power of big corporations and the political power that they wield. In some industries, this corporate power has become so concentrated that it may undermine and weaken democracy and freedom. This is a perverse twist of fate, as this threat did not enter Hayek's or Friedman's thinking when they warned about the threat of big government. The notion that big corporations could become so powerful that they could influence economic agendas and hold sway over national governments had not entered their analysis. Today, in sectors ranging from finance to energy to technology, the connections between dominant corporations and government are so extensive, there is a revolving door between them, with these corporations employing political officials who had a role in drafting the legislation and regulation that affects them. So, what might all of this suggest to us about a capitalist reformation? Well, there are encouraging signs that hearts and minds are beginning to change. For example, there are more people aged between 18 and 25 in America today who favour socialism over capitalism. That's impressive, given that America has spent the last 73 years exporting its extremely individualistic doctrinaire and its self-centred brand of libertarian capitalism. The emergence and rise of politicians like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren also indicate that America's dislike of left-leaning socialist ideas is weakening. Also, here in the City of London, Friedman's theory of the corporation and his doctrine of maximising shareholder returns above all else is being questioned. The socially responsible investing and environmental, social and governance movements are pushing companies to think beyond the narrow interests of shareholders and convince them of their responsibilities to other stakeholders and the environment. So yes, at the margins, mindsets are beginning to push back against stale economic orthodoxies and politically motivated economic agendas. However, we now need brave political leaders and a new generation of corporate leaders and institutional investors to draft the equivalent of Martin Luther's 95 grievances or theses. These grievances should rail against corporate excesses and political lobbying and tackle the misaligned interests of big business with the communities they serve and the fragile environments within which they operate. This will ensure that future generations can all enjoy the benefits that a fairer and more enlightened capitalism can deliver. If they fail to do so, the political, economic, human and environmental consequences could prove to be disastrous.